This is Frank Islam, Chairman and CEO of FI Investment Group, and your host of Washington Calling, where we interview leading voices from business and politics that impact you, the viewer. Today, our guest is Tarun Basu. Tarun Basu is a veteran Indian journalist who was a co-founder and former chief editor of the New Delhi-based IANS news agency. He is president of the Society for Policy Studies, a think tank that runs, among other things, the web resource South Asia Monitor. Tarun, welcome to our show and thank you for coming.
Thank you, Frank, for having me on this show. It's a great honor.
You're most welcome. So, how would you describe the state of the Indian media industry, considering the fact that the India remains a vibrant democracy because of the freedom of press, but that is now threatened? Do you see a dark days of India's democracy because they're less informed and less engaged and less enlightened?
Uh, Frank, first, before I start answering you, I also want to thank you for adding this new India dimension, or I think India or South Asia dimension to your show. I think marks a new phase of expansion of your very popular program, which I understand is aired in North America, Europe, and parts of South Asia. So I think we are going to have a lot of interesting people from India on the show. Now, coming to your question, Indian media, as you know, has been traditionally one of the freest in the world and very, very vibrant, and one of also the largest in the world. I don't know how many of your readers know, there are registered about 100,000 newspapers or magazines are registered in India.
Oh my goodness.
And there are lots of others which are not even registered. There are hundreds of TV channels. Out of them, I think the ones which call themselves news channels, there are about 400 or so, maybe even more. Nobody knows the exact number, but they are increasing. And what is the interesting part in media is more and more of these channels and media is expanding in the vernacular space, not so much in the English space, which is a little elitist. So a state like Andhra Pradesh or Uttar Pradesh or Bihar or Gujarat, each of them has 6 to 8 channels. I'm talking about news channels. Plus, there are any number of entertainment channels. So it's a very vibrant, very vigorous, very diverse kind of a media. It has its pulls and pressures. And lately, it has been subjected to some amount of pressure from various ideological groups. And in fact, I was reading the index of press freedom. And in fact, India is supposed to have gone down 2 notches on that press freedom index.
Correct.
And one of the results is they say there is a lot of attacks on various right-wing groups.
Yes.
That is true to an extent, but it cannot be generalized. Large parts of the Indian media are quite free to report what they want. But there is a criticism of the Indian media that Indian media is free, but sections are very compliant with the establishment, So there has been attacks in terms of smear online campaigns, and there has been criticism from within the media. There an element of self-censorship has crept in. But the Indian media is fighting back. It is largely free. And it is, compared to many, many other parts of the world, it is very, very vibrant and diverse as well.
Very well said. So I'm here to praise the free press because it is a cornerstone of the democracy. And also this is how the India and America, those are the values that binds us together. So my question to you, how do you see its future? Do you see that, and I think you mentioned a little bit about that you see a brighter horizon, even when there are some storms and clouds that have gathered, but you were able to work on it, correct?
Yeah, that's right. That's right. Even the worst time for the Indian media was in 1975-77 when Mrs. Gandhi curtailed emergency on the country. And the press freedom was, curtailed and the press was under censorship officially. But the media fought back, and that dark period, so-called dark period, didn't last more than 18 months. So I don't think the Indian media, the kind of, the the sheer size of the media, the diversity of the media, it's very difficult for any government or ideology or group to completely, put it down, so to say. And the Prime Minister himself has gone on record as saying that he is for a freedom of the press and he welcomes criticism of his government, constructive criticism of his policies. But
So
also he
despite,
has, yeah, sorry, go
go
ahead.
ahead. Yeah. So despite
But he has
all the
also, yeah, yeah.
threats and some of the killings that happened to the journalists in India, you see there a brighter horizon because India still remains a vibrant democracy because of resilience of the freedom of press. And uh, and I, I have to say that I might appreciate what's going on in India in terms of the freedom of press and the democracy. I want to just move on to the next question. How do you see the future of Indo-US ties?
I think the Indo-US ties are on a roll,
On a roll?
and in many ways are on a roll.
Okay.
Despite the change of government, there were some reservations in India as well as in the US, where if the partnership, which President Barack Obama put it as the most defining partnership of the 21st century, if that will continue. But despite, appending various policies of the previous administration and overturning various policies, other policies, but one of the areas where President Trump has shown a lot of continuity is in affirming his commitment to the strategic partnership between the India and the US. He has already met with Prime Minister Modi. They have had very good discussions. And they have not only met in Washington, they have met in other parts of the world and on the sidelines of multilateral summits. And I believe the new Secretary of State is scheduled to come to India very, very soon to have what is called the 2+2 meeting, where the Secretary will meet his Indian counterpart, the Foreign Minister, and the Defense Secretary, William Mattis, will meet his Indian counterpart, Nirmala Sitharaman. Interestingly, I mean, I'm sure some of your viewers would already know, both the Foreign Minister and the Defense Minister are women in India.
Yeah, and that's a wonderful thing to give the opportunity to the Indian women. So it is on a solid ground. As you know, there's a bipartisan support in America with regard to U.S.-India ties. And you said it very well, as President Obama said, it was a defining moment. But the U.S.-India relationship is still being defined. But it is on a solid ground.
Yeah, it's still a work in progress.
Work in progress is very well said. Let's talk about the India's ties with its neighbor in South Asia. What are the differences and the issues and challenges that are driving them apart?
Well, if you talk of broader South Asia, India has very good relations with Bangladesh. It
Yes,
has good ties with Sri Lanka.
and
It
Nepal and
has
Bhutan.
lately ties with Maldives has been a little frayed. It has excellent ties with Bhutan. It has
Yes,
very good developmental ties and traditional ties with Afghanistan. Well, Pakistan, as you know, it's a very unique relationship. And, right now, the India-Pakistan relationship is not what it's, if I might say, what the people would like it to be. And it's not an easy relationship. In fact, the former Indian envoy to Pakistan recently wrote a book where he talked about the very curious history of India-Pakistan relationships. There is a kind of a cyclical pattern to India-Pakistan relationship. There are periods of good relations, and then there are periods of bad relations. And then there are sometimes, however, there are one step forward followed by two steps backwards. But now, with elections in Pakistan in July and in
yes.
elections happening in India within a year, I'm not sure you're going to see any dramatic change in India-Pakistan relations in the immediate future.
So my question to you is with regard to they have a first military exercise between India and Pakistan shortly. Do you think that will help to bind those two countries together? But they are still apart because there's so many issues and challenges.
I am not aware of any joint exercises between India and
I
Pakistan at all.
I read it yesterday, Tarun.
Oh, no. I'm not sure about that because there's far from having joint exercises. There are things are too far apart. And I don't think anything is on the horizon. So it might be in a different context altogether. So because I have not seen anything like this in Indian media at all,
Okay,
and
so but
they
but
might be part of any multilateral exercises or things, but not
that
definitely any bilateral.
okay, that could very well be possible. It could be multilateral. I do not know. But I want to move on to be a very important topic to all of us because I know you have been actively involved and engaged in deporting the Indian diaspora. What are, from your perspective, its strengths and weakness, and what Indian diaspora can help to India to achieve its fullest potential, especially the fact that the India has abundant human resources that can be tapped upon to exploit the fullest potential and they can change opportunity to reality.
Frank, as you know, the Indian diaspora, which is about estimated to be about 30 million strong, is about the second largest Indian diaspora after the Chinese. So
Right.
the sheer numbers, and the diaspora sends back about $70 billion in remittances to India, which is the highest, much more than the Chinese or the Mexicans. This is number one in terms of remittances. The diaspora anyway is
And that
already
comes
doing a
from
lot
those the remittance come from North America as well as from the Gulf country. Are the Gulf country the
all
largest
over,
one?
all over.
All over the world.
Yes. There are about 6 to 7 million in the Gulf countries, 3 million in Saudi Arabia alone. There are 3 million in Malaysia. There are about 3 million in the US. There are 1.5 million in Canada. There are again about 1.5 million in Britain. And then the rest, as you know, are spread all over the world, including in Jamaica and Canary Islands. And, I've gone to Montego Bay and I found a big community of Telugu doctors there in
Oh
Montego
wow.
Bay.
They're
I
everywhere.
mean, they're everywhere. Indian doctors, Indian business, IT people, Indian technologies, they're everywhere. So on the individual level, the diaspora is doing a lot. I mean, your example is, I can straight away take your example. You are doing a lot in terms of giving back to the country from where you were born. You are
Thank you
doing
very
so much in the Aligarh University, which
yes.
I have heard a lot about and read a lot about. There's a
Thank you
lot
very
of philanthropy at the individual level, and you are also aware many are doing set up foundations to help people
yes.
in, especially in their hometowns or home districts. They are doing a lot. There are a lot of, in fact, some of your friends are doing a lot in UP and Bihar and Karnataka and Andhra Pradesh and all. But
M-
still, there's a lot that remains to be done. There is
But
a lot that India needs, in not in terms of just money, but expertise
yes.
and training,
Yes.
and probably diaspora could do in setting up more, you know, industries and factories in India, because India badly needs jobs more than anything else. They need charity, they need philanthropy, they need education, most important. But after
Very well
education, you
said.
need jobs, and that is where something where probably the diaspora come in, and I'm sure the government is tapping the diaspora in a big way. Prime Minister Modi, wherever he goes, he makes it a point to address the diaspora, and not just in Washington and London, but he has done this even in places like China or Japan or Malaysia or anywhere, any part of the world. In London recently addressed a big diaspora meeting. So there is a lot of engagement, but I think what India needs more is investment and jobs, and that is where
Very
I
well
think the
said.
diaspora can.
So I hear what you're saying that the Indians can make a substantial contribution to India's economy. They can create jobs, they can create companies, as well as they can help in innovations and entrepreneurship and take it to the next height. And I think, and also you said it very well, charity. Charity is a hands down, while the philanthropy, which is sustainable, is hands up. That can make a substantial difference in people's lives. You said it very well.
Definitely, thank you.
As I sit over here as an Indian diaspora, which I love India and the country that I was born, because India remains a beacon of hope, aspirations, and dream. What in particular, beside the job creations and economy, what particular and philanthropy, which you mentioned very well. What else can they do to help India? What other areas they can help?
The yeah, the main area what I would that comes to my mind is skill development. In terms of skills, there's a huge amount of gap or deficit between the requirement and the available capacity. You'd be surprised to know the figures. Only 2% of India's population, now probably it's 3%, is skilled. 97% are unskilled in terms of formal skills training. So there's a lot that gap, and the government and the businesses can only do so much, because a lot of the expertise can come from outside, from people like you and your friends, in terms of building up India's skills across various areas.
Very
There
well
are
said.
young people who are coming out of with just graduation, but they don't have the skills necessary for today's technology-driven jobs.
You're right, and being a part of the 21st century workforce.
Absolutely.
And you mentioned also in addition to education, the healthcare. The Indians can also help in India in terms of healthcare as well. I want to.
Yeah,
I
that's
want to
very
go ahead.
Yeah, that's a very important area. You're right on that.
I want to kind of shift the gears and talk about civic engagement, which is an important topic to me personally. How do you think the civic engagement can help to boost Indo-US ties? Civic engagement comes in several forms: the individual engagement, political engagement, and also the community engagement. But how Indian citizen can fulfill its responsibility up to be engaged and to be independent, to be civically engaged?
Frank, we are already doing the civic engagement on an individual basis. What you and I have started today is leading to a stream of engagement which can get to your audiences, North America and elsewhere, thoughts and ideas from people across various professions and expertise in India. So that is one area of civic engagement which can be broadened to include groups and communities. Lot of it today, because of the digitization and the widespread use of mobile phones and internet and other media, lot of it can be done on the cyberspace. But I think there is a need to bridge the information and knowledge gap between the diaspora or people in North America and with people in India. I don't think people in India are rightly aware of the kind of level of achievement Indians in North America have reached. There are stories sometimes that come out, but they are not enough. There has to be some kind of a bridging media which talks constantly of what is happening in North America, what levels of achievement people have reached, the kind of engagement people are doing, say people like you or so many others across many professions, the kind of academics, the top Indians that are in academia in America, the top Indians who are in IT, in Silicon Valley, or in top American companies. Not enough has been written or known about them, because they can be huge inspirations for young people in India. Because
Very well
again,
said.
I'm a little critique of the Indian media. Indian media, because of so many things that happen in India, is pretty inward looking today. And unless something sensational happens, it doesn't get the notice of the Indian media, and they don't have the space to carry it. So there is always there is always an opportunity to have some kind of a bridging media or a bridging information bridge between India and North America, which will carry real-time information from India to North America and North America back, which was already we had done at one point with India Abroad newspaper, but that was in the print form. But now 30 years later, we can do it somebody can do it in a digital space and keep that dialogue going on civic engagement, which is so dear to you.
It is dear to me because there's a deficit in the United States and also in India in the K through 12 education in middle school, which forms the basis for the students to acquire the knowledge and the skills of the civic engagement, to be civically engaged. And that's what happened in Parkland shooting, because they were eloquent, because they were civically trained. And so the civic engagement also can make a difference, and can make our life in not only just India and the United States, but the world a better place to live. I want to talk a little bit about uh, the current perception of the U.S. and India. What is the perception of the United States and India? Remember, our country has become more divided, more polarized. It is chaotic, and as you also know, that there's an attack on freedom of press and the media and so on and so forth. These are the dark days of our democracy. These are not the value and the character and conscience of our nation. This is not who we are as an American. So tell us a little bit about it.
Well, surprisingly, the perception, general perception among Indians of America is largely remains positive. You know, I mean, despite Trump and his Trumpism, if I might put it that way, that largely remains positive because I don't think people, I mean, look at the United States from only Trump's perspective. They know America is a large, very diverse country, and like India, it's a democracy. You know,
Very well.
Parties come and parties. So by and large, about 70 to 80% think very positively about it. The percentage which I think negatively of America is very low. Because one of the reasons is there is so much of engagement between India and America at the civic society level. In the largest number of Indian students, I think, from and the foreign students in America are from India.
That is a correct statement. And you said it very well. I want to make sure that the people who are listening in India, I mean, we should not. There's a seed that has been planted over here. This administration, which I do not subscribe to the notion, is the anxiety, anger, and fear. This is not the America that I know of. The students are welcome to come to our shore because they create jobs, they build prosperity, they create companies, and they are the building block of our economy. As you know, the 10% of our GDP growth is dependent on immigrants. And I said that the immigrants infuse this nation with the far horizons and new frontier, thereby keeping the hope alive and well. Tarun, I
That's
wanted to
right.
ask you, is there any concluding remarks that you can give before we depart?
Well, I enjoyed being on this show, and as we have discussed earlier, I think we would have the civic engagement that you and I have begun as has a bright future. And I think it will in some ways bridge the information and knowledge gap between the two societies, and there will be a lot of exchange of ideas and thoughts, and maybe this will lead to more vibrant two vibrant democracies multiplying their engagements at various levels, and this will enrich both the countries.
Both countries will derive the benefits from this exchange and dialogue, and we can contribute to that to the discussion, the dialogue. Correct?
That's
Um,
right. That's right. That's our hope.
okay, so thank you very much for your time, and thank you for all you're doing to serve our India and serve the world, and you are making a difference. And thank you very much for your engagement. This is Frank Islam wishing you a great week, and thank you for watching.